Our world is soaring toward 2012. Time is speeding up. Chaos is shifting into a new level, and we feel the pull to unlock the mysteries of the universe. Timeless spiritual wisdom offers the point of stability to navigate these times and to open our greatest potential. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the fun and knowledge of visionary best-selling authors Shri and Kira as they explore these mysteries and invite your higher love to come forward. And now, here are Shri and Kira.
Namaste. I am wisdom teacher Sri Ram Ka.
And I am Kira Ra, and welcome, beloved ones, to another powerful episode of Higher Love Radio. You know, one of the things that I'm sure you're noticing right now is what's going on in Syria. We're seeing a new presidency in Egypt. We're seeing lots of things happening worldwide, a theoretical meltdown of the Eurozone, problems in the United States. This is all indicative and trending toward ancient civilization paradigms, I guess is the way I want to say that, the way that these civilizations rise and fall. So today, Shri and I are diving deep into what causes the rise and fall of civilization and how does it affect our spiritual life, because I know you're watching this in your spiritual life and those around you as well.
You know, so many of us have placed great trust and anticipation that 2012 would bring with it a new age, a new era.
Talk about pressure.
Yeah, a rising,
pressure on 2012.
A rising up of the human potential. And in many ways it is doing that. Yet simultaneously it's also lifting up the opportunity to repeat,
yes.
Meaning history is repeating itself, and under the guise of newness is the same cycles. And let's take a look at some of these.
You know, and as we do, I'm listening to you, Sri, and I'm kind of giggling, thinking, how many of you know we've done this all before? Like, look at all the hands, right? We're like, oh my God, I know I've done this all before. We have. You know, that's that strong sense, and that's why there's this spiritual bursting and this spiritual imploding, because there is this ancient energy that's coming forward. You know, when we look at the rise and fall of civilizations, we're gonna talk about, there's actually 9 things that have been documented, and we're talking about, this goes all the way back to the ancient civilization of Ur from 2000 BC. This was repeated in Venice, which had its own rise and fall. This was repeated in the Romans. This was repeated in the Ottoman. We are seeing a very powerful pattern. And for those of you that may connect with past life energy, this is that sense of like, oh my gosh, I know something's getting ready to happen. But you know, here's the great news. The reason we're doing this show and the reason that we're inviting you to share this show with as many people as possible, please repost this show, get it out to as many people as possible, is because we have a choice. And as we go through these 9 steps with you, you'll see we're right at that precipice. And I think that's the pressure on 2012, which is why one of our most popular books on 2012, You Have a Choice, is still so powerful in this moment right now.
That's true. You know, whenever we reach the summit, whether it's climbing a little hill or standing on a fence, there is the teeter-totter moment. There is that moment where we've reached a pinnacle, and there's a void energy that comes in. There's a spaciousness that comes in that sometimes is not felt as ecstatic, is not felt as exciting. It's felt as new, different. And to the egoic aspects of ourself, that's threatening.
Very much so. And so let's dive into it. You know, we did a video recently talking about the collapse of the 4th dimension, and we also did another video talking about ascension acceleration symptoms. If you have not visited those videos yet, please do, because they overlay with this video very, very powerfully, really working almost as a teaching model, because when we talk about the rise and fall of civilization and the rise and fall, or I want to say potential fall, of our spiritual evolution, let's pay attention, because everything is conspiring to say, what do you want? What do you want the world to look like? What do you want your life to look like? So should we go through the steps?
Let's do it.
Okay, so there are 9 steps that we'll be going through for the rest of this show. So you might want to write this down. You might want to take notes. Maybe you want to pause for a minute, go grab that cup of tea or get that pen and paper, because it's really powerful to pay attention and recognize this has all happened before many, many times. What do we want to do about it now? So keep that in your consciousness. So here's the first one. A nation rises to greatness and becomes wealthy based on sound principles and the hard work of the initial generations. Well, that's very, very valid. That's very true.
Well, absolutely, and we've certainly seen that for any of you that are this age.
or any age, I think you have it in that family history.
You've seen where hard work and focus and sound principles produce good results.
Right.
Produce stability, produce wealth. And certainly in other civilizations, this example has shown itself.
And you know, when we look at that in our spiritual life, right? So we have this rise of a nation that becomes wealthy and the people become prosperous, and there's this shared system of hard work and focus and reciprocated energy from the powers that be. And we're going to talk a lot more about that when we get to some of these later steps. But when we look at our spiritual growth tree, it's really the same thing. We have this awakening, right? There's this moment where there's this stirring inside of you, and you can be 10 or 100 when it happens. You can be born with it and you just nurture it. But the reality is you dedicate yourself to it.
And through spiritual practice, through the sound principles, begin to call to yourself the fruits of the practice.
And you know, do you remember, I remember when you have that initial pop, right? You know, I mean, I was born very clairvoyant. A lot of you know my story, and very, very open until my parents basically told me, stop being clairvoyant or we're medicating you. And then I had my pop after my near-death experience, and I remember there's almost a naivety there, Sri. Yep. There's that fascination. There's that, oh, there it is, the bigger world. And there's like that childlike innocence that becomes the wealth factor, you know, when we look at it in conjunction with our civilization rise. Mm-hmm. There's that innocent phase. And I think that's really what this first phase is saying, is that everything is growing and maturing through your innocence.
And innocence doesn't mean it's immature.
Not at all.
It means that your intention is unpolluted by a distraction or a cynicism.
Right,
it's
right.
just that we're moving forward in trust and faith.
We are. And so let's go to the next step, because this is so fascinating. So here's the next one. Eventually, becoming wealthy becomes the natural expectation and entitlement rather than the goal to work for or continue achieving. Entitlement energy. Now, you know, we've talked about this a lot. We also talked about this a lot in our Ascended Sanity program and how to work through that.
Yes. Entitlement is, you know, one of the classic things is second-generation businesses, you know, family-owned businesses or trust funders. And
or Greece. How about Greece?
Yeah.
Right now, you know, I mean, the reason I'm bringing that up is what happened in Greece. We had that situation where people retired. Wasn't it? I think it was full retirement at age 55 with like a major amount of their income.
80% of your income is retirement.
That sounds like entitlement.
This sense of entitlement comes from having been prosperous for a period, and just an expectation is set up that, well, it'll always be this way, and I do not have to focus or effort to make it happen.
And you know, we see that, I think, worldwide in lots of different countries and lots of different systems about this entitlement energy. And I'm not talking about the political term of entitlements like social welfare programs. We're talking about a mindset. We're talking about an energy of entitlement that kind of says, well, and I think, Sri, you hit it really well with second, third, even fourth generation businesses. I grew up, you know, I'm not saying me personally, I'm saying, you know, like people who grew up in very wealthy families that, you know, really did nothing to earn the legacy that's being given to them. And by the time it hits second, third, and fourth generations, not always, but a lot of times, there's just this sense of, well, it'll always make money. What's the problem? You know, why is this happening? Well, this is what happens in your spiritual life as well. You go from that first step, that awakening step of fascinating innocence to, well, now I know it. Right, you know, I know how to balance my chakras. I know what a chakra is, or I
can
know,
manifest that parking spot.
Exactly,
you know,
exactly. Make that light turn green, or whatever. But there's that you see where the balance. We let go of the recognition of the openness to be the conduit, and we just start looking at kind of almost the lower aspects of that beautiful gift. And again, this is a natural evolution, and I do want to share, if you have not yet taken advantage of our Ascended Sanity program, it is $22 for, bar none, the most life-saving, powerful information for navigating these times. Just go to the Self-Ascension Classroom at our website, shriandkira.com, and just check it out. Just check it out. And because this is a very powerful step, because here's step number 3. A nation begins living beyond its means to maintain the high life without hard work, leveraging credibility to trade tomorrow's production for today's consumption.
Now, tune into that last phrase.
This is a big, do you want me to say that again?
Leveraging.
Yes,
please.
Yeah, I think we should, because this is a real, I know a lot of you are going, as you're looking at that one right now. But it's leveraging its credibility to trade tomorrow's production for today's consumption?
Basically means we become a society of debt, that we're leveraging to our salary and so that we can create or call to ourselves things that we can't afford.
Well, and it becomes short-sighted.
Yeah.
You know, this is, I think you're seeing this in the United States with the Social Security program. This is part of what's going on in the Eurozone right now. We've seen this happen in other countries all over the world where there is this sense of, well, it'll always be this way. You know, why should I worry? And, you know, I was taken care of, so thereby I know my kids will be taken care of, without recognizing all the way back to step one that there was this sound principle at work. There was this hard work. There was this dedication that kept everything going. And at some point, you notice we're at step 3, and we're only a third way through. There's 9 steps. You start getting far enough away. You know, like, for example, I think about being far enough away. My father was a World War II veteran, and you know, my dad was part of the landing at Iwo Jima and saw horrific things, horrific things. His best friend was right next to him when his head was literally blown off. And so I grew up with my dad having constant flashbacks of what happened in World War II. Horrible nightmares. Yeah. But yet my children and their children are so far away from World War II that to them it's more of a something you read in a history book rather than a tangible experience.
Or a B-movie.
Exactly, exactly. You know, but rather than I grew up with a real influence of what the horrors of that were because of my dad.
Yeah. And just on a side note is that due to the technology today, war has become removed from a true sensory experience of the impact of one's actions.
Yeah, it's a video game. Yeah, and this is why it's so important, because when we're talking about why we would be willing to leverage against tomorrow or borrow against tomorrow, there is this sense of disconnect. You know, we begin disconnecting from our beloved Earth, our beloved Gaia. We begin disconnecting from our children's future, from the fact that water, clean water and air should not be taken for granted. And the recognition that when we see societies doing that, it does start modeling the spiritual path, because when you've had that innocence and then you've learned it, you've mastered it, well then you start almost taking it for granted. You build spiritual credit.
Well, and here's where it gets a little bit slippery.
Exactly.
In that the truth of our spirituality is an infinitely abundant universe. Yet when that sense, that truth of infinite abundance comes through the filter and lens of a finite ego, of a finite being here on earth, it refracts. There's a distortion. And so what happens when we begin to leverage is we move out of now and we become future preoccupied.
Right.
We start to separate from true flow.
You know, in the spiritual world, Shri, I see a lot of people doing this right now because of A, the 2012 energy, and B, this preoccupation with ascension. And I think that there's and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, so hear me. What I'm saying is that there's a preoccupation with leaving the planet. There's a preoccupation with the next world, which is very much the leverage. It's saying, I've kind of let this world go. So my question is, have we piqued your interest? Are you ready to go for more? Because these are just the first 3. There are 6 more. And as you can see, as Shri started mentioning, it becomes the slippery slope. We are at the choice point. And the next ones we're going to talk about are bar none the most critical before you would get to those final 3 where it's like, okay, we're going to have to reset. We're going to have to control, alt, delete all of society.
Do they still do that?
I don't know, but I think they could be. So why don't you take a breath? Why don't you relax? We're going to give you a moment to enjoy a message, and we'll be right back because this is important.
Namaste. I am wisdom teacher Sri Ram Ka. Are you noticing that life is speeding up? Are you experiencing changes in perception, interrupted sleep patterns, headaches, and shifts in personal relationships? Chances are you are having a spiritual experience, not a medical problem. We call these experiences AAEs, or Ascension Acceleration Energy Experiences. These are signs that your vibrational rate is accelerating. You can learn more about AAEs and how to reorient yourself to the energy of these transformational times by visiting our website, www.self-ascension.com. That's www.selfascension.com. As a nonprofit organization, we offer classes and teachings to support your journey. Visit the appearances page at our website, www.selfascension.com. Blessings on your path.
Namaste. Yes, we are at the time of energetic upheaval in preparation for what many are calling the quantum leap of 2012. The fifth dimension is here now. I am Angelic Oracle Kira Ra, and as a full trance channel, I have often been compared to Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. Together with my husband, wisdom teacher Sri Ramka, our mission is to bring pure angelic guidance to those who are ready to step into the powerful energy of this time in history. Our teachings, lessons, and weekend intensives will assist you to stabilize your path of upliftment and bring divine, abundant clarity to every moment. Learn more at self-ascension.com or call 505-286-9267. Write that down, self-ascension.com or 505-286-9267. Know the love that you are.
And today we are exploring a dynamic topic. Are we repeating history, or are we evolving into a new era?
You know, why do we let civilizations rise and so brutally fall? Why do we awaken only to step back into darkness? Can we do anything about it? And that's why we're here today, to find out the answer to that question. And I really believe that we are. We're exploring that question, and we're really glad you're back here with us. If you were with us in the first part of the show, and if you weren't, go back and listen. We went through the first 3 of 9 steps that are proven steps that have gone through the rise and fall of civilization. And we are noticing how they exactly mirror the growth of our spiritual life.
They do indeed, because we're here. You know, it's ironic, when we take a subject like social, economic, and political stability, rise, and eventual decay, it does mirror the spiritual process, and many people forget that the outer world is in fact mirroring our inner world.
Well, I love that, Sri, because that's really it. It's that, of course it mirrors it, because we are one with it. And that's another aspect of the show, is to recognize there is no separation here. We can be talking about the rise and fall of civilization. Of course it ties into the rise and fall of our spiritual expansion. So should we continue?
Let's go.
All right, so we're on number 4. Here it is. Number 4. Living beyond our means eventually becomes unsustainable. Governments begin to slowly and then very, very rapidly devalue currency.
So this we've experienced in a couple of ways. I think most of you have touched credit card debt, living beyond your means, and all of a sudden these monthly payments become a bit of a prison.
A little crippling.
Yeah. And at the governmental level, well, another program, another road to be built, another social program, whatever it is, the military, we'll just print some more money. We're living beyond our means, so we'll make up a way to get more money.
Exactly, but we've let living beyond our means, going back to number 3 in the step, it became, like it came through that subtle entitlement energy, and then we're like, well, we're going to borrow against our future because we're not going to worry about somebody else's future, and then all of a sudden...
Look at all that money in the Social Security Trust Fund.
Or whatever.
We can use that.
Right, or wherever. And so it hits us one day, and that's really what's happening right now. And this is step number 4, and what you're going to see is these next few steps are those critical decision factors. And have we gone beyond them? Because as we get to the rest of the steps, there's going to be, I know for a lot of you right now, just take a breath. There's a lot of aha moments coming in, because you're going to go, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, we have done this. The key is, even if collectively as a society we've brought ourselves to the brink, we always have the opportunity through education, which is why we're doing this show, to be able to take our personal power back. Because when we allow ourselves to be subjugated and to live beyond our means, we devalue our spiritual life. How many of you have realized, you know, I think we talked about this in some of our other videos, Sri and I are standing strong. We are not selling out. We have seen very, very good friends, people that you guys know all their names, who have really sold out right now because they're just cashing in on a spiritual naivety that they're hoping will make them personally rich. And when you sit with these people in an outside room, I know I shouldn't really say that, they're not going to like me for saying it, but when I sit down with these people, I'm just sitting there stunned at what comes out of their mouth. The key is, what do you want? You know, the reality is society, we have said, placate me. We have said, tell me things that aren't true. Tell me what I want to hear so that I can make the crippling debt go away. Well, what's the crippling debt? It's this self-doubt. It's the fear. It's the preoccupation. That's why it's so important to pay attention.
You know, paying attention means listening to yourself. We can get preoccupied with what's going on outside and forget to tune into how we're really responding. What part of ourself are we drawing forward in order to engage the outer world? And we talked about credit card debt as an example. Well, there's been a sense of victimness that comes forward that it now is playing out, saying I'm working as hard as I can and I have no freedom left. Well, that's the energy of a victim.
Indeed.
And we use the outer world to touch that energy to discover whether it's true for us or not. You may not have gotten to the point of knowing that's what you're doing.
but let's get to number 5, because here we are. People finally wake up to the fraud. Anonymous movement, the 1%. You know, I go back to dear Aaron Russo, who's crossed over now. You know, he was one of the first ones to really sound that horn. I know we have the Michael Moore, but Aaron really sounded the horn.
Well, he went right for the jugular.
He did. He really did.
He informed us about the basically the fascist principles that were playing out in the United States. And so when people begin to wake up to the fraud, we're referring now to the outer fraud of the political and social system that has been structured to disenfranchise some and benefit others.
Right. And you know what's interesting is this is step number 5, which is the tipping point, isn't it, on the 9. This happens spiritually. You've been on the journey, on the journey, on the journey. You've been searching and doing and claiming. And then one day you wake up and you realize what those people are saying in the back room and that the authenticity might not have been what you thought, and you wake up. So there is a gift. There is really, you know, everyone, every being, every government, every politician, every being on the planet plays their role perfectly. Because without that great conspiracy to play the role perfectly, you might not have woken up to the fraud being perpetrated. So this is actually a powerful moment that has a real balance in the horror of the waking up to the fraud and the gift that you are waking up to the fraud.
Right. When you discover that you've given your power away in some fashion, whether it's to an authority, a politician, a consumer desire, when you've given your power away and let an outside force manage your energy, your money, your vitality, what will happen at some point is it will be misused.
Indeed. So that brings us to the next step, okay, which is repression. And usually it's financial, because that's where everybody's the most afraid, right? So financial repression follows high taxes, which steal from people that are trying to still make money, and negative interest rates, which steal from people that are trying to save and build something up. So why is that repression financial? Because it's the method of the day. It's the way that the whole illusion is sustained, because we have all given this a reality check. We have all endowed paper with power.
You know, in ancient Rome, the Romans really taught us about expansion. You know, remember Rome? Rome started off as Rome.
And have you ever looked at a map of like what the Roman Empire got to? It's alarming.
It kept growing and expanding, and the people of the original Roman civilization enjoyed the fruits or spoils of war, all the resources that were brought in. And eventually, as it began to get to its state of decay, they began to actually mix crude metal in their money.
Literally. Sound familiar? Like a silver coin was no longer silver?
They began to devalue their currency while simultaneously increasing taxation on the outer regions.
Totally fascinating, because you're like, wait a minute, isn't that what's happening right now? And that's the key. We are repeating that pattern. So here's the deal. Once you wake up, those who don't want you to wake up start waking up to the fact that you've woken up and go, whoa.
And then repression comes.
Exactly. And the reason they go after the financial piece is because they know that fear will put you back asleep. Think about your spiritual journey. You're waking up, you're waking up, you're waking up, you're having all these amazing experiences, you're feeling so wonderful, and then it's either a friend, a coworker, or perhaps a societal issue that suddenly it just feels too hard for you to stay awake. So you little by little start self-justifying to yourself or blaming others why you can't stay at that level of awakeness. Think about it.
Fear is the most insidious energy that will undermine your empowerment, your peace, and the truth of who you are.
It's a double F, fear and finances.
Fear and finances, yes. And what happens is that we become filled with a sense of doubt. as that fear takes hold. And we
Indeed.
doubt that we can move forward. So
Right.
now we buy into yet another lie.
Exactly. So here's number 7, flight. People pick up and run. Usually the first people who pick up on run are people who are in the know, meaning people that have lots and lots of wealth, because remember, this is usually financially based. So the very, very mega wealthy see it coming, or their friends tell them it's coming, grab their money, run. Right? Sounds like fight or flight, doesn't it? Right? And the stress reaction, because that's all it is. It's the stress reaction.
Oh, I remember some years ago, Britain went through this cycle of high taxation, and they had a brain drain where the most creative, inventive, cutting-edge folks who were earning high salaries, doing research, were sick and tired of losing 60 and 70% of their earnings, so they went to other countries.
Right.
It's just a small example of what happens when the government seeks to tighten the net.
It really is. And so that's the same thing that happens spiritually, is you just say, I've had it. And I've watched people who go, you know, polar opposites. I've watched people who were highly spiritualized in a metaphysical way suddenly become fundamentalist Christians. I've watched people just throw away all their books.
And we see them go the other way, too.
Exactly. I mean, it's not right. It's not all one way. But what are we seeing globally? We're seeing a high polarization in fundamentalism as far as spiritual activity. We're seeing a high flight. So people are afraid. And remember, fear and finances are what do this to you. Brings us to the next one. You ready? Okay. Governments will then implement stronger capital controls, right? Border controls, price controls, wage controls, anything they can do to maintain the status quo. And people start noticing that the police are protecting who? You know, I look at Egypt on that one.
Yeah.
Who are the police really protecting in Tahrir Square during Arab Spring? You know, I mean, that's just a great topical example, but these are very real things, is because they're afraid too. You know, it's the same fear.
So whenever a structure is created, and let's use an example of a political structure, once that structure is created, the rules and the rule keepers will be charged with maintaining the stability of the existing system. We are like that inside. We like stability.
We do. We want our status, you know, even if it's uncomfortable,
Yep.
we want the familiar discomfort.
And so these controls and trying to keep people from moving their money out of the country, slowing down movement within the country, is an effort to collect the energy inside one vessel. Meaning, the system that is now in decay is seeking vitality to prevent its further decline.
And this is what happens to us inside. We all face that dark night of the soul. And at some point, every one of us goes through it. And when you're in that moment, only you can pull yourself through it. That's where the tools that you learned early on, that's where when that childhood naivety that woke you up can come forward again. When that mantra, when that gift, whenever it is comes forward, you are the one who navigates through your dark night of the soul. And only you can do it. And we are collectively at that bridge moment of the dark night of the soul. And this is step number 8 of the 9, my loves. And so everything that we've said, socially, politically, spiritually, personally, do you see what's happened? I know you do, because I know you're incredibly intelligent and ready to be free, or you wouldn't watch our show. And I know you don't want me to just sit here and BS you, I almost said the right word, because you're smarter than that, you know, and the reality is that we're all smarter than that. We've just been capitulated, we've just been told we're not, we've been told it's good to not free think. Forget that. It's good for you to free think. It's good for you to express yourself. You deserve that.
And the outer world is, in fact, your playground.
Indeed, and it's a fun one.
and you know, there's so many people that have seen the signs of the decay or felt a yearning for greater spaciousness or freedom that have made moves physically to line themselves up. This has been going on for years. We have friends who have moved to Costa Rica, friends that have moved to Mexico, friends that have moved to Singapore and Europe, and they're all seeking a different environmental situation that will call forth a sense of freedom, call forth a sense of safety.
And I want to share that it doesn't mean that any of us, you're saying, well, gosh, Sri and Kira, you guys moved to Central America.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that we have flown from the countries we were raised in. What it does say is we are becoming universal citizens. And the more of us that can anchor in whatever place calls to your heart. If there had been a place in the United States that called to our heart to stay, we would have stayed there. But for us, it was very clear that the anchoring of the energy, the points of light on the planet, was in Central America for us. Where is it for you? Let your heart show you. There are beautiful places everywhere in the world. And here we are, we're at number 9, last one. What happens? Default is the end game, and the system has to reset itself and begin anew.
Default, reset, begin anew.
Control, Alt, delete.
So to default means to finally admit that it's unmanageable.
That this was crazy.
That it is not working for me any longer. There's lots of symbolism there. Some of you just caught what I said.
Very much so.
The other thing about default we're seeing in the economic world over in the Eurozone, and Greece and Spain and Italy, countries that cannot sustain their commitments for expenditures are defaulting on their loans, their bonds. They don't have any ability to pay back those who invested. And one way or another that will be resolved, either through printing some more money for a while.
For a while, remember that's step number 8.
Which is postponing.
Right, exactly.
Drop back to step 8, postpone the default. Spiritually, when we've been on a path that is not authentic for us, our essence, the default comes. And then again, we're at that dark night of the soul. We're at that place where we're seeking truth, energy, security, a sense of belonging. We're seeking the compassion of the universe once again.
And yet, this time, we know. And that's where we'd like to end you today, is to let you know that, hey, if we are in the end game, if we are in the ultimate Control-Alt-Delete, spiritually, politically, professionally, it doesn't matter. The fact that you're aware, the fact that you know, means you get the gift of deciding how that reset looks. It does not have to be horrifying. It does not have to be terrifying. You have the opportunity right now in this moment. Bring your hand to your heart. Feel the gift that you are. Feel your own sense of empowerment. Claim your authenticity. Demand authenticity from those around you. And don't compromise. Allow yourself the gift of your ascended sanity. Go check out that small little, it's a beautiful $22 course. When we live with ascended sanity, there is no end game because we recognize that it's all a game and we are the extraordinary co-creators. Let's take a breath. Sigh. And until we have the blessing of being with you again next week, right here at Higher Love, may you know that all is truly well.
Thank you for joining us today for 2012 Higher Love. Remember that you can find out more about Shri and Kira by going to shriandkira.com. That's SRIANDKIRA.com.